Welcome everyone to episode 9 of our podcast. And I can't believe how quickly the weeks are flying.
Me too.
Yeah, should we just quickly introduce ourselves to anyone who isn't familiar with our podcast yet? But you soon will be. Right. Over to you, Andy.
I'm Andrew Sinclair. I'm one of the co-founders of the Sculpture School, and I am a professional sculptor at the same time, doing mostly commission work.
Okay, fantastic. And
I'm Diane Coates Sinclair, and I'm a co-founder of the Sculpture School with Andy, wife of the boss, and general organizer and admin person, really, I would say.
I'd say so.
I'm his memory.
Pretty essential.
I'm his memory and dictionary.
You're the glue that keeps everything together. or the comparative thing in sculpture terms. So my name is Lindsay Jan Bauer, and I'm a creative arts executive at the Sculpture School and kind of fit in wherever and do outreach. But anyway, what have you both been up to since I last saw you?
We had an outing up to Kingston, actually, didn't we?
Yes. Yes, thank you for that, because my mind went completely blank. Nothing.
Several years ago, Andy created a maquette for a public sculpture to go into Kingston town centre.
Can I just stop you there? Just for listeners who aren't familiar with what a maquette is. Di, what's a maquette?
A maquette is a small version of the intended sculpture to allow the clients to see the sculpture idea in 3D, basically in reality.
Okay.
And Andy created the sculpture of Athelstan. And well, probably best if you describe what's actually in it, because you know the history.
Yeah. This is a friend of mine that I'd worked with in China for, we were working for a Russian oligarch at the time, recreating Versailles in Highgate.
You work for a Russian oligarch?
Indirectly.
I don't
indirectly.
know this story.
No, this is another one of my stories that you probably haven't heard. Okay. But it was an indirect working for. Okay. It was all top secret at the time. It was in Highgate in London. And he wanted a whole load of replica marbles made. And this friend of mine, his company was organising that whole thing. And he asked me to go to China with him to make sure that all the sculptures were Baroque enough.
Right.
So I thought I was going to go there for just to be a consultant. I was really pleased about this because I've never been a consultant like that. But actually, when I got off the plane, I was immediately shipped over to the stone yard.
Factory, wasn't it? Really?
It's a massive place. And immediately got to work correcting 12 pairs of hands, 12 pairs of feet. It was a huge amount of work. And in the clay, so these were all clay maquettes, but life-size, so it was 1-to-1 proportion. The Chinese workers there had created them, but it was my job to make sure that it was made European. So there's a massive difference in culture, of course, between the East and the West. And it's difficult to bridge that culture gap from an artistic point of view if you're not really practiced at it. So that was my job. Anyway.
Nothing to do with that.
Years later, we got together again on another project because he lives in Kingston and he wanted to make Kingston into a destination rather than a town that you pass through on the way to Wimbledon or Richmond. And the idea was that because it's got an amazing history, 5 kings were crowned there before 1066. One of the most prominent of which was Athelstan, who was Alfred the Great's grandson. And I thought this project was fantastic at the time. I thought it's right up my street, this kind of thing. So I did a lot of research on it because it was during the lockdown. I had some time on my hands. And I thought, well, if we really want to get this underway, it would be good if we had a maquette. Okay. So I launched myself into making a maquette to help Alan, this friend of mine. And he's been working on it on and off ever since. And we went over to Kingston at the weekend because to help promote the project and bring it into the public eye, he'd been working with the university in Kingston to create it's AR and VR images of the sculpture.
Okay.
Yes.
Augmented reality.
Yeah, augmented reality.
Yeah.
So it's where you wear those
Like
goggles.
the headset.
And you can hear sound through them as well. So it's a kind of cyberspace experience.
So like an immersive kind of quality to it.
And Kingston University have been working on this project for over a year, haven't they?
Yes, they have.
And they did a 3D scan of Andy's sculpture, and then have turned it into this augmented reality experience, really. And so they were launching this in the Market Square in Kingston at the weekend, weren't they? It was quite a weird experience to go through, wasn't it, for us? Because
it's surreal.
We don't do computer games or anything like that. So to actually see Andy's sculpture, it's not like a hologram, but it was that.
Well, it's more than a hologram.
Yeah, it's much more than a hologram.
I was likening it to the experience that Rodin was going through, actually, where cameras had just been invented and they were becoming commonplace. And there was a big fear at the time that what was the point of painting or anything else if you've got a camera? You can get a perfect image of what a painter would paint. And it caused a lot of insecurity amongst artists. But when you look back at that, the insecurity was ill-founded because photography is photography, painting's painting. And there's never been a problem with it. In fact, Rodin immediately realized how useful it was to sculpture. And he started photographing his clients rather than trying to sculpt them from life, which is incredibly difficult to do when you've got clients that are very famous, very wealthy, very, very busy. They don't want to sit for sculptures like that.
Yeah, because this reminds me, I think we've touched on it a little bit before about when there's new technologies coming along and it's like how we work with like our craftsmanship and the technology, the crafts and the knowledge and skills that have been going for years. So sculpting skills, for example. And then like you can't be a dinosaur. You can't completely ignore the new technology, can you? But it's just, it's not, I think it's not being fearful of it. I know sort of, we've touched on AI and also like sort of, I don't think we've touched on it in our podcast, but I know certainly in other conversations, we've talked about 3D printing and there's different sort of elements. And I'm sure we'll sort of, like include aspects about these things in later podcasts. But yeah, there's, I think there will always be a need for sculpting with our hands, won't there? And those skills will never go away.
I hope so.
Yeah, those skills will never go away. And those skills will continue to be passed on.
Yeah, even if it's just about the emotional connection with those skills rather than technology not being able to do it. I think technology will be able to do it. In fact, technology is doing it right now. And I've been involved on the periphery with stuff regarding this for a long time, actually. And I've watched it develop. And as you say, the important thing is not to become afraid of it. It's about thinking outside the box, thinking about how you're going to incorporate it, thinking what's useful from it. So it's vitally important not to dismiss it. It's vitally important not to become a Luddite. And
I think the idea behind this project is to raise public awareness and also to bring sculpture to the younger generation and hopefully make it relatable to them so they can experience it in this sort of AR setup. And we hope it will then lead to the public being behind the actual funding and production of the real sculpture. Because I don't think anything can replace an actual sculpture for its impact in and the Market Square where we were is stunning and a perfect space for this sculpture, and it's right near the King's Stone, isn't it, where Athelstan was crowned and the other kings. Yeah. So if it leads to more public interest and more backing to have the actual sculpture there, then it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, and this is brilliant because it's where sculpture kind of links all these different aspects of life. So we've got history, we've got sort of the younger generations, we've got tech, sort of bringing new sort of visitors to Kingston because of this incredible story. Also, you've got the sort of academic side with the university being involved. So, and at the centre of all of that is a sculpture, isn't it? And your work, Andy.
Yes, yeah. And I think from a point of view of showing clients what the sculpture is going to look like in place, it really does have an impact. It takes technology to another level altogether. But at the moment, that's a year's work. There's no way you could afford that.
Yeah.
They had to get grants and funding to do all of this. And it was lovely to see young students working on this and getting so excited about a project like this. But at the moment, we're probably 5 or 6 years away from it being a useful thing. Although there are companies around at the moment, some kitchen companies that we're not going to name, but they use it all the time now to show their clients exactly what their kitchen's going to look like. And one thing that I did find fascinating about it was that I was talking to Alan whilst I was looking through the goggles. And you can see Alan through the goggles, but he moved into the sculpture. He didn't know he had, but that's what he did. And he disappeared into it like a ghost.
Yeah.
So the virtual reality overcame real reality.
Sounds a bit
I thought it'd be the other way around, that he would get in the way of the sculpture, but it wasn't. He was like a ghost. He just disappeared into it. It was sounds surreal.
Like a sort of like a drugs trip or something without going down without going down that 402 much. No, it just sounds such an interesting kind of commission and a project that you got involved with. And before we come away from that entirely, because we're going to talk about figurative sculpture today. But could I just go back slightly to, I'm fascinated by when you first met Alan and you went over to China.
Right.
Can you just tell us a tiny bit about that before we...
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of work at Crosby Hall at the time, which was Sir Thomas More's palace during Henry VIII's reign, of course. And that has been moved brick by brick back to the South Bank in Chelsea.
It's Cheney Walk, just on the edge of
in Chelsea,
near the Albert Bridge, I think it is.
Yeah. And the history behind it and everything behind it is absolutely incredible. And to work there was a real privilege. And I did a lot of Baroque work there. So it was early Renaissance. Yeah, because Mannerist was the earliest Renaissance, wasn't it? Then it became Baroque. And so it was challenging because you've got to understand how the artists at the time were thinking. And all of that kind of work to me is just grist for the mill, really. I find it fascinating. And the work that I did there with the historian that was working there called David Honor. And he and I became very good friends, actually, because what his vision of what Crosby Hall should become was on my shoulders to make it authentic rather than, Disneyland, which it could easily become. And it was through David Honor that, it wasn't through David Honor, but he really taught me about the Renaissance in terms of the practicality of the way that sculpture worked, which really helped when Alan phoned me up to ask if I could go out there to help him maintain the authenticity that was needed for this project.
And when you first became a sculptor, Andy, did you have any idea that you would be, working in sort of like beautiful old sites and then being asked to go out to China? Because it sounds like your career's had, there's lots of aspects of your career I know about, but then there are these elements where you've had these extraordinary adventures that I know nothing of, until today. Did you have any sense that your career would unfold like this?
No, none at all. What I do find interesting about a career like mine, and lots of people have careers like mine, in that they create their career for themselves. So they're inventing it for themselves. It comes from your imagination, really. And that the physical outcome of that are these incredible experiences that come upon you as surprises, really. They're just fantastic opportunities to go abroad and work, especially to a place like China. That was fascinating.
How long were you there for and died? Did you go as well? Or
no? Well, I think I was just working for you at the time. I don't think we were in a relationship at that stage. I think you just. I was just working at the studio then.
Sandy just took off.
Just flew off to China.
At least some fancy free. How long were you? Yeah, how long
I was
were you
there for 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
And did you have like an interpreter? Like on the practicalities, how did you kind of, how were you able to sort of put what you wanted across, working with these different sculptors?
They spoke pidgin English.
Okay.
And one of the main experiences that came from this was it was like going backwards in time. The health and safety was
non-existent,
staggeringly non-existent. Yes. Yeah. The guys that I was working with literally unrolled their bedroll at the end of the day and slept next to their work, and then they woke up early in the morning and they worked all day on it. And so we got by actually by I was showing them what to do, and they were very interested in the same way that I was very interested in what they were doing, because they were translating this directly into marble, and they were doing it through pointing, which is, what we touched upon on an earlier podcast. And the guys that were doing it, some of the guys that were doing it, the older men, were staggeringly talented. I mean, really, really talented. One of them was doing a Baroque naked cherub, and that naked cherub appeared in, I would say, 3 to 4 days of chipping away at marble, and it was that big, taken again directly from a 1-to-1 maquette.
That's incredible, because when you watch someone work with marble, and we're going to dedicate a whole or nearly a whole episode in future podcasts to a marble sculptor that we know and revere. But when you watch someone sculpt, it's such a delicate process. So to have a block of marble and reduce it and make a beautiful cherub out of it in 4 days, that's incredible.
Well, interesting. It wasn't quite as romantic as that, really. It's a lot of angle grinding.
Okay.
A lot of angle grinding with no goggles on and no...
and horrendous noise.
Yeah, there were no earmuffs, nothing.
Yeah.
It was just incredible.
Yeah.
It was, and he was wearing a proper Chinese coolie hat. So it was...
What's also interesting is that, as you mentioned it slightly earlier, that the Chinese history of art is so different to Western art that they that's why you were there, because they didn't have any knowledge of Baroque, Rococo, anything that happened in the Renaissance, and certainly cherubs don't feature in Eastern art history, do they? So they were having to learn techniques and images that they don't really have any concept of.
I don't know what training they had, but they had an amazing facility to understand it. It wasn't as if...
No, but it's real skill to be able to...
Well, incredible skill. Yeah. Absolutely incredible skill. Yeah.
I think it's just so lovely to bring, those two different worlds together, kind of like the art that we associate with the Chinese and, some of their beautiful... like some of the art that was commissioned by the various emperors and things, and you look back at some of the imagery. The British Museum a few years ago did an incredible kind of exhibition about their artwork, kind of spanning centuries. And then obviously we've got our sort of European sort of ideas of art with the Renaissance and all the various movements, like the pre-Raphaelites and, kind of like sort of the art that was produced over sort of the Tudor period and things in the sort of UK. There's just like so much that we can touch upon. But yeah, it's so lovely to have that refreshing cultural change, isn't it?
And I think I really benefited from the work with David Honor, actually, and the work at Crosby Hall.
You created so many different styles of work, didn't you? Because you had the pieces that were roundels that looked like sort of Roman terracotta style roundels, didn't you?
They were emperors.
And then you had portrait busts that looked like marble, but weren't. And then you had the life-size figure of the baronial squire, was he? And that was on top of a mantelpiece. I mean, can you imagine the size of the baronial hall having a life-size sculpture on the mantelpiece.
It was my job to put the bronze on the mantelpiece. We're
It was
just
quite
under
incredible,
a ton.
wasn't it?
And and the mantelpiece was 8 feet high, I think.
So it's just like the logistics as well, isn't it? It's not just this. Well, I don't mean
there's
just, but there's the
responsibility,
sculpture, but then there's also like mounting it and like how you sort of elevate it to where it needs to go, and looking after it because it's very precious cargo.
So is the mantelpiece. It was terrifying.
No, I can imagine.
Beautiful marble mantelpiece.
It was stunning.
And also it's involving lots of money, basically, isn't it? Because if anything goes wrong, like the value of all of those different components is huge. And plus you're in another country, there's all sorts of different kind of rules and regulations that apply. So it's a lot to consider, isn't it?
And it's yet another sculpture that we know the Queen and Prince Philip and Prince Charles and the cabinet all stood underneath it.
All admired it.
All admired it.
And that's the problem with sculpture.
Yeah.
It's a sculpture of something. I think we touched on this before.
Yeah.
It's a sculpture of something.
Yeah.
The artist doesn't get a look in because you never get mentioned.
That's why it's so important to raise the profile, I think, and the recognition of sculptors. Because there's just a few that kind of get a mention sort of quite frequently in the press, but apart from that, everybody else kind of sits under the radar. And it's just like, if we want these skills to continue, then it's really important to kind of showcase who the sculptors actually are.
Well, it's a strangeness because I can't think of any other profession where or type of art where the artist gets no mention at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's a painting, it's a painting of something by so and so and so. If you write a book or a poem, it's a poem or a book by so and so, because people feel that gives it authenticity. But if it's a sculpture of somebody.
Yeah, so
that's
true.
it.
Yeah,
and it's weird. And it would be lovely to lift that veil on the secret sort of element that goes with sculpture, that people just go, oh, here's a sculpture. It's just there. It's just there. That's all there is to it. There's no concept of how it got there, what's behind it, and the skill that goes with it. And I think that's actually, I'm not sure if that's a modern interpretation, because certainly during the sort of Renaissance period, right up until the early 20th century, sculpture played a massive role in our public life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Less so now, because it's losing its reputation through being really bad in some cases. Not all, but some cases.
But it's also gone out of fashion, hasn't it? Because in the 1900s, it was very common for wealthy people or aristocratic people to celebrate their achievements by having a portrait sculpture, and cemeteries, particularly in Italy, they are the most amazing sculpture exhibitions you could ever imagine. And we've always said we're born in the wrong era, because if we were born in the 1900s, we'd be so busy,
inundated with work,
and quite wealthy.
You might be wealthy, but then you'd never have any sleep. So you just keel over a sculpture, your feet in the air.
That's true, but sculpture's gone out of fashion really since then for that purpose, hasn't it? And paintings and photography, I think, have taken precedence.
I think that's why it's so important that we have this podcast, because we know that there are sculptors out there. We have so much interest from people all the time who want to learn to sculpt. So the enthusiasm for sculpture is out there, isn't it? It's just about kind of keeping these incredible skills going, like getting out there to the next generation, and just kind of, like really putting sculpture back on the pedestal, literally and sort of metaphorically, of where it belongs. So that's part of the aim of doing our podcast, isn't it? And just to, I'm going to push back a little bit, Andy, actually, at what you've just said, to be controversial. Now, I've only got a couple of examples. So just like some sculptors who have sort of remained famous, and so when we see their sculptures, we kind of know who created them because they are very distinctive. I think you probably know who I'm going to mention from a visit that I had the other day. But so two sculptors that we've discussed before previously. So Rodin and also Edgar Degas. And so if I quickly mention where I saw some of their figures, and then that will bring us into talking about figurative sculpture. But so these two are probably sort of more exceptional, aren't they? Because we do remember them, we do know who they are. But as you say, Andy, generally we kind of don't know who the sculptors are behind these beautiful works of art.
Yes, yeah. Actually, well, Degas and Rodin are two of the most famous, I would say. Jean Bologna, Canova, Michelangelo, of course.
Bernini,
yes. They really did and have become eternally famous. But there is an awful lot out there. I mean, the majority of them really, that have no provenance. Well, they have provenance, but you'd have to know them as an art dealer or an art historian. People like McKenna,
Bertram
McKenna, who was Australian, and he was best friends with George V, I think, and very famous in his day. In fact, his sculptures are all over the country and in Australia. Really beautiful, famous stuff. But I actually went into a very famous book shop in London,
St James's,
specialising in art books, and asked him if he had any books on Bertram McKennell, and he'd never heard of him. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a man that really knows his stuff, and he'd never heard of Bertram McKennell. And Bertram McKennell was friends with royalty. He hobnobbed with the royals at the time. He was the man. And yet, less than 100 years, well, it's 100 years later, nothing.
So he's just got lost in the mists of time. This is why it's so important, I think, again, like with the podcast, to bring some of these, really influential sculptors back out into the public sort of domain. And then, like sort of our generation, younger generations can Google and try and kind of bring some, praise back to their work.
I think if we can do that with this podcast series, it would be a fantastic achievement, actually. We need some help.
Yeah. We'll do our best to make this happen.
I find what you're saying fascinating, actually, because it is about making really good armatures. If you don't make a really good armature, it interferes with and restricts the sculpture itself. So it's vital that you have a really good armature. But it is fascinating that somebody as renowned as Degas ends up with a piece of wire sticking out of their hands. And I've seen other sculptures that are really quite famous, actually, that still have their armatures sticking out because they got it wrong.
Yeah.
And so do you want to hold that to the camera, and I can just talk about it? So this is one of the practice pieces that we use for students' first go at figurative sculpture. The idea behind it is that it's a human figure in an anatomical position that allows you to practice the skills that you need in order to be able to make figures in motion. So it's all about how to measure the human body. So by measuring it in a standing position like this, it's the simplest way of helping students to get through the preliminary skills required to be able to sculpt beautifully.
It's a starting out piece.
It's a starting out piece. If you compare it to music, it is like the scales. So in order to be able to play a piece of music well, you've got to get your hands used to playing the various scales. And one of the first things that you'll learn if you're learning to play the piano is to play your scales. Yeah, if I'm still right, that was what my experience was when I was being forced to learn the piano by my mother. But this is very much that. This is not a song in its own right. Mm-hmm. This is a practice piece. And it creates what I call a map of the anatomy of the body in the correct portion. So you're learning tricks of the trade is how I would put it. And just thinking of this little story about Degas, I can just imagine what was going through his head when this bloody piece of wire ended up sticking out through the hand, which there's not much you can do about. And he had real problems in those days because armature making was very difficult.
Okay.
There was no welding.
Yeah.
You had to make things out of bits of wood, bits of iron that you had hanging around. There was no aluminium that we've got these days.
They didn't have this lovely armature wire.
This isn't aluminium. It's an aluminium alloy. I think it's mixed with lead that gives you this lovely ability to bend it without breaking your fingers or needing special tools. So artists before the 1960s really had problems. They had their work cut out just making an armature. Whereas these days, I wouldn't say it's incredibly easy, but the technology that we now take for granted, it makes it a much more straightforward and accessible way of being able to work. So welding's an essential skill, I would say, for any sculptor. And we do teach that at the studio. But it is interesting how it still stays a gender problem, that men tend to want to weld. Women really tend not to want to do it at all.
I think it taught me to weld.
No, I can imagine you welding.
I really enjoyed it, actually. And I welded my sons were into wakeboarding and snowboarding.
Yeah.
So I made a bench seat out of 2 snowboards, didn't I?
No, you did really well.
And I really enjoyed it. And my son is still using it now. To promote his clothes.
No, I would love. I was just thinking, because I remember seeing my dad weld, and I was just thinking I can imagine like wearing like the welders. You wear like a shield, and I'd love to have a go. Just to go back to armatures, just to sort of finish that story. Di, can you just point out on your sculpture here where the armature is and where the back iron is, and can you just say something about the back iron as well?
So this piece here was called a back iron, and traditionally it used to, this tom here used to go into the back,
right? Okay,
of the actual sculpture. But as part of Andy's sort of R&D and experience, we redesigned it so that this actual piece of bar here goes into the side.
Okay,
because there's a lot less going on in the side than in the back, isn't it? The back would be
okay.
And you can really make something of it.
Yeah.
So to have a great big piece of metal stick into it messes up the sculpture.
Yeah.
So Andy redesigned this. So we make these for our students. So when they come on the figurative course, they automatically are supplied with one of these and a ready-made armature. So this is the armature. This is the bending.
I wouldn't bend it, darling. It's just about to fall off. It's completely dried out. And Kira will want to be working on it.
And so we make these in advance as well, before the students arrive on the course. But then during the course, we actually show them how to make one of these. We found through experience that it's much nicer for the students to get starting on the clay first, rather than bending bits of metal. It's not what they expect to do.
Yeah.
No, when we're teaching, I really want to make the teaching experience fantastic for the students. It's all about inspiration. And starting the whole process with an armature is counterproductive. It's not the exciting part of it. It's vital. So we get going with clay straight away on a ready-made armature. And then we usually on a Thursday afternoon, we stop a bit earlier.
Okay.
And then all make an armature together, because that way the students want to do it because they want to have the complete picture.
Yeah.
If you start it like that, it's, I've got to make an armature. And it's all psychological. If you can love making armatures, if you can love every process, part of the process, then your skill and your dynamic ability to be able to sculpt anything becomes a joy from beginning to end. And I really, really believe in that. We've mentioned it before, this idea that art is somehow you suffer for your art. It's absolute rubbish. You don't suffer for your art. You have great fun. It's brilliant. Why would you want to suffer when you've got something as fantastic to do as that and satisfying?
You want to enjoy what you're doing, don't you? And that enjoyment will then translate into
your work.
Yeah, into your work, whatever you're making.
The other thing we were talking about the other day as well is that a lot of people don't see the armature making as sculpting, but actually it's a crucial part, because it's where the design comes into reality, isn't it? And you're sculpting when you're making that armature, and lots of sculptors, lots of clients don't accept that making the armature is a essential part of the sculpting process. So it's a really important thing to learn, and you're handicapped actually as an artist if you can't make it. It's a lot harder when you're coming up to life size, because then often I don't want to sound sexist in any way, but sometimes a woman just doesn't have the strength to deal with the steel and the welding, or doesn't have the facilities, and so you need someone to make it for you, don't you? You've had a lot of clients that can't make their armatures.
Armature making is very difficult. You've got to find where that figure is as a skeletal shape in space, and it's got to be accurate as well. That takes another series of skills that you learn in order to be able to do it. I don't use pointing anymore because it's too slow, too laborious, too much equipment.
Yeah.
So it's more of a mathematically based process that's too complicated to explain today, but it enables you to build a very accurate armature very quickly if you're focused.
I want to just say as well that I love the fact that you've moved the sort of back iron where it comes into the body to the legs, because I remember you talking, and we've said about this quite a few times on our podcast so far, about your amazing talk about 36 muscles of the human body that all sculptors should know about. Is that 34 or 36?
34.
34, sorry. I'm just adding some extra muscles there. But and at the during sort of in the back, you've got the sacral dimples, haven't you?
Yes.
And some other features. So if you had the back iron coming into the body
it gets in the way.
It would kind of maybe prevent you adding the detail that you need to those aspects like the sacral dimples and so on.
Whereas lumbar furrows, sacral dimples, everything in the back is beautiful to stick a piece of steel right into the center of it. Crazy.
Yeah. No. So just shows for listeners that if you want to come and learn to sculpt properly, come to the sculpture school, because it's all these what might seem like minor details but actually make a huge difference. And then it's really going to translate into creating a more superior, sophisticated sculpture.
It will save you years of finding out for yourself. And it would have said, if I could have talked to myself when I was 32. Yeah. It would have saved me a decade without any doubt whatsoever of trial and error, creating sculptures, making pretty big mistakes, I would say, from time to time.
So all of your knowledge is condensed into what you're teaching now, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
it is.
Other students don't have to go through your pain and anguish.
It wasn't pain and anguish. I always thought there would be a book that would have been written about 1880s to sort of 1920s. I couldned find it. I spent a decade looking for that book. Yeah, well, I've written the book. And I always felt that there were secrets to the trade. It's like bricklaying. If you want to be a good brickie, to be able to do herringbone patterns in bricks and curves that are vector curves, it's a trick. Yeah. It's a trick of the trade. I love this idea that it's a trick of the trade. And sculpture's the same thing. They're tricks of the trade. And once you know these little secrets, you no longer have to copy. You can create something immediately just from your imagination because you know what the basic rules are. All predators, for example, if you're talking about animal sculpture, all predators, the cats, the dogs, bears, all have the same secret anatomy. They all follow the same rules. Right. And once you know what those rules are, and they are comparatively simple, once you know what they are, you no longer copy because you know that when you look at a photograph of a bear or a lion, that there is a triangle underneath the eye, for example. Right. And their nose is the same width as their eyes. There's a whole load of little secrets that go with it that intrinsically enable you to interpret what you're looking at, not copy.
Okay.
And that it sets you free. It's exciting.
It is
really
fascinating.
Exciting.
I love the fact that since I've been with you, I've heard so much about all these little rules and secret tips that, ordinarily we just wouldn't think about. I was just going to say one more thing about the Degas sculpture, the other sculpture that I saw at the courtyard, before we sort of talk in more detail about figurative sculpting and also the charts. Yeah, and these two. So the other bronze ballerina sculpture that I saw at the courtyard was Degas. So another ballerina, and this time she was holding her leg up, and she was like twisted and looking at her leg. So she was effectively standing on one leg, holding that balance whilst looking behind her. And the text that went with that sculpture said that this was Degas had actually worked with a ballerina called Pauline, and she was his model quite a few times, and he tended to use the models from the sort of opera ballet in Paris, and they were often impoverished, and they were grateful for the income that they generated by being a model for an artist. But apparently Pauline had written a number of times about how uncomfortable it was trying to hold this very difficult position. It would have been very difficult balancing on one leg. But it just reminded me, Andy and Di, of what you've both said about when you work with real life models and how you are sort of perturbed if you sense that they're uncomfortable, trying to hold a position, and how that can distract you as artists from doing your work.
Yes, it does. But the way that I get round that is by making most of the sculpture first anyway, following the rules.
Yeah.
You've got to be very careful about this, because if you only do that, you end up with a model, you end up with a kind of anatomical facsimile of a human being. Yeah. And it can look good, but it doesn't have that sense of that je ne sais quoi, that extra bit. So bringing in the real person to just see how creases work in the armpits, for example, or the way that one muscle flows into another in real terms is essential, and it lifts the work. But it also enables you to work with models that don't have to suffer, because they don't have to maintain that position for ages.
We use photography as well for difficult positions.
We do, but also just seeing the real life model in that position.
Oh, it makes such a difference.
You hold it in your memory forever, actually, so you know what to do. Because seeing a muscle in a photograph and knowing what it does in reality are two completely different things, actually. So when you're looking at a muscle, you know where it comes from, its origin, where it goes to, its insertion, which we call rhythm. You know what that muscle's doing that you see in the photograph. And in the photograph, it can be giving you a completely erroneous rhythm. And that's when copying goes wrong, because you're not understanding what's going on. You don't know where the muscle's coming from and going to. So when you see it, because of the shadow and because of the play of light, you interpret it going in completely the wrong rhythm. And that's a shame. That ruins your sculpture. It takes away the pizzazz, the reality, the wow, because you're looking at it thinking, it's not bad, but
something not.
And you don't want to be thinking that. You don't want people thinking that of your work.
No, absolutely. I think that's the good thing about your 4-day figurative course as well at the sculpture school, is because you do have a live model in, don't you? For is it day 2 that happens?
Yes, it is.
It is on day 2. Yeah.
So and then so students. And we'll talk either in today's podcast or in a later podcast, we'll talk about, like, for example, on that 4-day figurative sculpting course, what happens during each day, because that's quite important, I think, for listeners to understand, like what's the journey of coming as maybe a complete beginner to the sculpture school on a figurative course, and how do you get to the end result, and what exactly do you come away with at the end. But we'll leave that there for a minute, because Di, I know you want to talk a little bit about these figures here, and also we've got some charts to show listeners, and maybe if we describe what we can see, just for anyone who's maybe listening to this podcast in their car or
Yes.
Yeah. The figures that we have in front of us are the figures that Andy created for the écorché course, and écorché means stripped bare, doesn't it, or flayed.
Okay.
And it was a tradition in the 1800s, 1900s to study anatomy, and they used to make a lot of wax flayed figures, didn't they?
They were amazing, those wax.
Incredible. We saw some. Where did we see those?
Well, I went to an exhibition in London. Was it? I don't know if I went there with you, actually.
We saw some on holiday as well in Florence.
Oh, in Florence we did, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So Andy created this for our students when we're doing the écorché course. So it's got the deep muscles already in situ. And the idea is Andy was talking about insertion and origin. So the idea is that our students that come on the écorché course can actually place the muscles in the correct position on the bones. You might like to take that a bit further.
Yeah. It would have been nice to be able to create a skeleton in order to do this, but in fact, a skeleton isn't robust enough to be able to take students sticking clay all over this time after time after time. So the idea is that it's strong enough to be able to take the rigors of student life.
Andy, sorry to interrupt, but could you just describe for people listening, what does this figure look like? So we've said that it looks like it's stripped back, and by stripped back, can you explain? And like facially, what does it look like? And
basically, what we've got is a skeleton. The skeleton is dressed with some of the deeper muscles. I've put them in to support the skeletal shape, so that it is a robust figure, and it's holding 2 walking sticks, basically, both of them pretty long, actually. But the idea behind this is not this time to produce a figure in an anatomical position, but to introduce movement. So one leg is straight, one leg is bent, and the students learn what happens to the muscles when the leg is bent and when the leg is straight. One arm is straight and one arm is bent, and again, the same principle applies. So that as you're applying the muscles, you are understanding the stretches and the compression that goes through different types of movement. So the scapulae on the back of this figure, one is closer to the spine, the other is further away as the arm is stretched out, and this arm is pulled backwards, pushing the scapula closer to the spine. So that you get all these little tiny nuances in as fast as you possibly can, because the quicker you learn all of this stuff, the easier it becomes for you. So the idea behind all of this is to paint a big picture of how sculpture is done as quickly as you can for the students, so that their skills proliferate from there quickly, so that it keeps their interest going. It makes it into a fun and challenging education program.
I feel it's a 2-day course, isn't it?
It's a 2-day course.
Yeah. I feel that by studying écorché as well, doing the 2-day course, that you have, as a sculptor, you get that sort of more sophisticated sort of lens on what you're creating, don't you? Because because obviously students coming on your courses will be taught all the basic techniques and the foundation anyway of what to do to sculpt, beautifully. But I think that as you were saying, Andy, by knowing how, when you look at the body and it's stripped back, but then you're applying the clay and you see how the subtleties of movement just by a leg kind of being bent, and it's projecting the sort of the lower part of the body, the abdomen slightly forward, and all those different sort of nuances that you might not see otherwise. So it just adds that whole extra layer of sophistication to any sculpture.
It's an element of learning as well, not the be all and end all.
No.
It's what I want to do is create a system of learning that draws people in, that fascinates them. So this is a very practical way of understanding the placement of the essential 34 muscles in a way that allows you to begin to understand movement. But it's not how sculpture is done. It's not how sculpture's made. It's how sculpture develops once you have got through what I call the rapid sketch stage, where you are focusing on design and proportion and creating a map on that rapid sketch that allows you then to sculpt, knowing that the xiphoid process is in the right position, the tummy button's in the right position, not just knowing that they are, but knowing why they are. because once you've really learnt your anatomy well, there are rules to where the tummy button goes and that make the sculpture work beautifully. So a crochet is just one aspect of the learning program. It's not the be-all and end-all. I thought it was years and years and years ago, but now I've grown older and I'm more experienced. It has its place, which I think is vital, because if you don't know where these muscles are, you're blind as you go into the sculpting aspect of it.
And anyone that is watching and is wondering what the second figure is, that's the actual figure with the muscles in place.
This is what the students will get.
So that's what the students are aiming for.
It still looks pretty horrific. But,
it's only the face is skull-like, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is.
But the body looks very muscular. It's kind of like a gym, gym honed
it's
body.
Like a gym bunny that's gone drastically overdone.
Maybe reduced. Been shredding too much. Modern parlance.
It looks. There's 12. We've got 12 of each of these, and it looks like the Army of the Undead.
I know when I first came into the sculpture school, actually, I noticed those in the cabinet, and I was like, "Oh my god, what's that?" I was like fixated. It's time for us to wrap up our podcast today, but we do need to come back to figurative sculpture quite soon, because we're going to talk about the charts that you created at the sculpture school, Andy, to help students when they're working with figurative sculpture. And also we're going to talk through that 4-day figurative course too. But for now, we'll leave it there. But Di, would you like to tell us about upcoming courses? And did we have a quick question as well that was sent in?
We did have a quick question, but it might take a long time to answer it, actually. The question came in from a stonemason.
Okay.
And he wanted to know if our courses would be suitable for him. Yeah. So he's in the middle of his stonemasonry training.
Okay.
But he wanted to know what benefits he would get by coming on our courses.
Okay. So do you want to tackle that next episode, or?
Well, we can. I think we should tackle it now, because we've mentioned it now. But we'll forget.
Go for it. I must say that when I sort of my outreach work at the sculpture school, I have spoken to quite a few stonemasons actually, and also wood carvers.
Wood carvers.
And quite often there's like an interest in if you're in that line of work, like there's like a crossover. Like, what would it be like to work in clay and ultimately bronze? So
Well, traditionally, all lifelike realist sculptures were made as maquettes first, so that the artist, whoever that might be, whether it's Rodin or Michelangelo, all of them that work with Jean Bologna, Canova, all of them that work with marble didn't go straight into the marble. It's simply not possible to do that, because you can't find the figure in the marble, no matter what Michelangelo said. It still had to be made first in clay, so you had an idea of what was happening. And in that maquette, they were using these basic principles that I'm teaching, which is making sure that you've got your proportions right, making sure that every aspect of it reads beautifully. And those are the tricks of the trade that I'm telling you about. So from the point of view of stonemasons and wood carvers as well, this information that you're getting from here, even though you won't want to make clay models afterwards, is essential, absolutely essential, because it allows you to be able to move into pointing and all the techniques that create really, really good stone and wood sculptures. Because the main problem with all these other materials is that knock a bit off too much and you can't put it back.
Yeah, of course.
And so these techniques, these skills that do take study and do take practice are absolutely essential. And I would suggest you really do come to the school to learn these. It'll lift your game massively.
It's about proportion and design, isn't it?
It is. It's all about proportion and design.
Create a representation of reality.
Okay.
You've got to understand it.
Yeah.
And so that's doesn't matter what side of 3D art you're in.
And we do make it fun, and
we do,
because it should be fun. It's and it's learning that carries on and on and on forever. I was holding a class last week and one of the students pointed something out and I had never seen it.
Right,
It's in fact that a dog's face is in the golden mean, and cats' faces are too. So if you measure from the nose to the eyes, that distance will be 1.6 longer than the distance from the eyes to the ears.
Right, okay.
I never saw that. Quite cross about it, actually.
You learn something every day. Yeah, it's nice when there's that interchange of knowledge, isn't there, between your students and yourself.
It's fantastic, but, and there is no point at which you know it all.
No, absolutely. And also, I love the idea that a wood carver can come and learn a transferable skill from a bronze sculptor. So yeah, that's fantastic.
We have cake decorators as well.
Yeah,
because they're now in various cake competitions.
Yeah,
they're doing life-size figures.
Right, okay.
In cake,
yeah.
So basically, like for anyone, there's a transferable skill you can learn from the sculpture school and take it into whatever field you work in, whether that's, carving stone for a church or making a beautiful cake, anything is possible. And just in terms of courses, Di, what's coming up?
We have an animal portrait course at the end of August, and then our next figurative course is actually in September. Third week of September.
And every month there are taster days running, aren't there?
Every month there are taster days as well, and it's always on a Wednesday, and it's usually the first week.
Brilliant.
And all the details are on the website.
Fantastic. There's also accommodation that can be booked at the sculpture school, and it's beautiful accommodation. And also for any corporate companies or hotels or colleges or anyone who wants to book a bespoke sculpting training session for a day, please get in touch with the sculpture school. Just email Di at the sculpture school and we'd be really happy to accommodate your wishes.
One more thing just before we disappear is that we're also doing taster days for animals as well.
Yeah,
and that's really important for people that are interested in animal sculpture.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, both of you. It's been really lovely to catch up. And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. Please tell all your friends about us and keep listening, subscribe, send in your questions, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.